everyone. This is the channel AgileSeeker, and we're talking with interesting people about interesting stuff. And today my guest is Scott Ambler, advisory board member in the Intersection Group and the vice president of Project Management Institute and chief scientist for Disciplined Agile. Am I saying everything correct, Scott? Am I forget something?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the session. Me particular as being a member of the PMI Institute, this is a great honor to host you in here. So as a starter, as like a start of the conversation, if you don't mind, we can start from the very beginning. How you get into project management? How was like the first tick, like I want to do project management? How was this?
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. So in many ways, you can't avoid project management, in any sort of a career where you do more than just be a hands-on worker. So I started my career in the IT space. I earned a degree in computer science. I worked on multiple projects in the financial industry over the years. Became a consultant. Went back to school, got a master's degree. Worked for e-commerce firms during the .com boom. Got into the process game. Became a consultant for many years. Helped run a company for many years. Worked for organizations around the world, and doing a wide variety of things. And invariably, you end up on projects. So either you're a member of a project team or you're the PM, the leader on the project team. So, and being one of the more senior people, I tended to, often lead or at least help lead various teams over time. And often I was in the role of an architect or a senior technical person, or sometimes like a coach, an agile coach or a process coach. And there's project, we do projects all the time, and non-projects as well, right? There's long-standing service teams and good stuff like that. So, but you end up on projects, and if you want to move your way up, then you end up having to gain the skills, basic project management skills. There's you're gonna end up doing it. You might as well do it well. So yeah, that's the way I would look at it.
See, so I've started as a technical person. I see that I have a degree in the computer science. So being a person with a technical mind, like doing some stuff. How was this transition? For the project manager, because it's actually, as I believe, a bit of shape of mindset about actually participating, doing some plan, executing, to a more person who is looking for the big picture, to see all the chessboard, let's call it like this. How was this transition, and was it smooth? Let's call it like this.
Oh, it's never smooth. but yeah, no, you basically said it, right? Like once you start looking beyond your existing job, right? So I was a coder. I started as a coder, right? But as soon as you start looking beyond that, and you realize, well, wait a minute, we need to do design work and requirements gathering, and oh, wait a minute, we need to test, and oh, wait a minute, we need to deploy, and oh, wait a minute, we need to support and operate this system once it's in production, and do everything else there is to do with the software lifecycle. You start to realize that there is a bigger picture, and then as a result, how the heck are we going to make it all work together? Because it's no good being you can be a really awesome coder, but if you don't have, if somebody's not keeping an eye on how we're going to deploy, how we're going to test, how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that, then it doesn't really matter, right? It's that overall picture. Or if you've got dependencies on other teams, right? If your team could be doing a fantastic job, and then you find out, oh, well, this team over here just did something or isn't expecting what you think you're going to deliver next week, and oh, congratulations, you need to wait 6 months now in order to deploy, or do whatever it is you were trying to do. And it was because you weren't managing the project well. So if you want to be successful, you really do need to take these bigger issues into consideration. And that's one of the things that a project manager would hopefully do.
Yeah, I see. I see. Actually, I heard a lot this kind of opinion that everyone in the team should be a bit project manager. So like it's all about like this collective ownership stuff, and it's not even, I guess, related even for the projects. Like for the ordinary life, you are like planning something, executing something, like planning everything. So it's a bit of a skill, I guess, that needed everyone. So, but there is a small joke I heard that like there are a lot of developers that are becoming project managers, but I have never seen a project manager who is transitioning back to a developer. And that's why I'm asking about this technical switching there. So
Yeah, so I've actually seen that. It's pretty rare, right? So and it'll almost always be a, somebody who was very technical, they became a project manager, but then they realized, you know what, I really like coding, or I really like testing or architecture or whatever. And so fair enough, and then they decide to focus their efforts on that. So but I don't think I've ever seen a non-technical project manager become a true coder, because just
yeah,
it is what it is, right? Although, maybe I bet you there's a few people who've gone back to school and, totally changed their careers. So, I'm not going to, given that there's 7 billion people in the world, I got to think a few of them have done that. But, odds are, right? I just haven't seen it. So fair enough. And there is something to be said about the low code, no code development platforms now. So I have seen some non-technical people build some interesting stuff. So, we're getting there. But yeah, having said all that, it really is, there's great value in having PM skills, even if you're not the project manager, right? Just understanding basic planning skills and dependencies, and this idea that you can't, like, you got to have some flex in your schedule, and you got to be prepared to you got to think about the dependencies, right?
yeah,
So once again, it's like, you're not autonomous. Like, one of the great myths in the Agile community is that teams are autonomous, and it's observably not true. It just isn't, right? It's a wonderful fantasy, and you might be autonomous every so often, but you have dependencies on their teams. You get funded. There's other development teams that are building something that you're going to use. There's the people running production. There's the security folks. And that's just in the IT space. So you've got dependencies on other teams. So you darn well better be keeping an eye on things and managing them. And if not, you got a problem, right? And then suddenly things go very poorly for, because of the actions of some other team.
I see. I think actually it's also connects with the transformation about how was the project manager role like 10 years ago, like not for too much going in the past. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I remember when I was just starting this thing, I was like something around 17, 18 years old. So like the way the PMs, at least at this part of the world, was appointed, it was like the best player in the room, like the best coder, the best worker, the best electrician, no matter what field you are, saying he can be a good PM. And this was one of the things that always makes me questionable, or saying like, if the person is very good in building something, what makes you think that he's very good on leading something, organizing something, motivating, or doing this stuff. But in my opinion, currently it's a bit transforming about what's the role of the project manager itself. It's not always, I guess, should be the best player in the room. I mean, the best person with the best knowledge. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very often not. So, very often your best technical person is not that great of a manager, and they probably won't enjoy it. Although maybe, but you should always, give them the opportunity. If let them experiment, and if they want to take their career in that direction, then good, let's help them do it. But no, very often the project manager is not the most technical or the most knowledgeable person in the room, but they often are they should be, the people with some of the better people skills and leadership skills and ability to see the bigger picture, and to help coordinate everybody else on the team, and work with the various people that you've got. That is a heck of a set of skills.
Yeah, and there's also a point what I will usually hear from technical people is like this, let's call this invisible line that they make it, like from how I would do this as a developer, like in past, or an electrician in the past, or now how my team will do it. About, for example, the simplest stuff, like I think the simplest, but it seems the hardest one, like the estimations, or how long would the work be done, or how should be the work done. The team is the key. They're saying like how long, how they gonna do it, and like they're the experts. But if you are like in past, you've been an expert or like one of the best players in the league, you always have your opinion, and it's up to the person. I mean, like psychologically, to draw this line about not overlaying your personal authority as a project manager to the team and saying, hey, guys, I know how this should be done. It's definitely not 5 days. You can do it in 3 days, but definitely your team won't agree with this. So this also this controversy, I guess, exists in a certain way. So it's always a question about if a person can do it or not.
Yeah, and that's been around that's been an issue for decades, and I suspect it'll be an issue decades from now. But fundamentally, the people doing the work are the ones who need to estimate the work. They're the ones that are the most knowledgeable about their ability and what they've got on their plate, right? So for example, today, just before this interview, I was working on something that is really only 3 hours worth of work. It's going to take me an entire week because I can do half an hour here, half an hour there, and that sort of a thing, right? So there's that reality on the ground. Yeah. So the person might be right. Yeah, this really is 3 days worth of work, but it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks just because you can't focus on it or whatever reason. But they also, particularly in the IT space, and this is also true outside of IT, but certainly in IT, I've got solid numbers on this. The productivity of your best developer is 25 times greater than the productivity of your worst developer. And that's an industry number. Within an organization, it'll be more like 1 to 10, right? Because your organization can attract a certain class of people. And whereas Amazon can attract another class of people, which is probably better than the class of people that you can attract. Just, call it like it is. So that's the issue, right? But yeah, so even within your organization, it's 1 to 10. So if your PMs are the people who were really good and work their way up the food chain, they're probably on the 10 times productivity level rather than the people on the team, which might only be 1x or 2x, something like that. So it really does depend. And if you think it can be done faster, then roll up your sleeves and help.
Yeah. I guess this is the best advice that can be given to the PM. If you know how to do it, just do it. Yeah. So I see. Yeah. And one more question concerning with the project management. I mean, lately for the last years, there was like a waterfall approach. I mean, it's still, and in this part of the world, it was literally even longer. Yeah. And still it's a bit prevails, I can say, like not in IT, let's call it, but mostly it prevails. But currently the modern generation, like the younger generation, they're like more organically agile. Yeah, so it's like shifting in there. So how was your first interaction with agile? How you just open for you there? Because I do believe these two approaches, waterfall and agile, they have a lot of in common. Whatever it was all, but they have the same roots. But despite that fact, they are fundamentally support different philosophies. So what's your idea on this? How was your first interaction with agile?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So the reality is that there will always be the more traditional waterfall efforts because it's the nature of some work is waterfall makes sense. We call it serial, but and the nature of other work, agile or lean, makes sense. So do the right thing in the situation that you face, and that's one of the things we preach in Disciplined Agile. So we actually support multiple types of life cycles specifically for that reason. Different teams in different situations will work in different ways. That's observably true. So accept that fact and then do it right. So so that's our basic philosophy. But my background in this, so when I started out, like I started in the 80s, right? So, and it was all waterfall. It was like, we didn't even know to call it waterfall at the time. It was just sort of starting out. And to be fair, in the 60s and 70s, it was more agile and more effective. But then The bureaucrats took over and it went waterfall for a while. So in the 90s, I was doing a lot of work in a waterfall manner. I bought into it. I believed in it, all this big upfront planning and modeling, all this stuff. And I was on several very large programs and it didn't work. It just didn't work. I was on some small efforts where it didn't work either. Or at least it didn't work very effectively, right? And we inherently knew it. Like we were creating all these documents that nobody cared about, and they get reviewed and sit on the shelf and they're to be looked at again, right? So it was just observably just that this isn't right. So, anyways, so I was heavily into that, and knowing full well that it wasn't working, but I couldn't tell. I didn't know what to do, right? And I started doing things that worked rather than what should have worked, right? And which is where one of the reasons why Agile modeling came out so quickly after the Agile manifesto was written, because I used to do a lot of architecture and design work, and I started writing what we were doing in practice rather than the nonsense that the professional modelers were writing about. So anyway, and what happened was in the mid 90s, the rational unified process came out, and it was an iterative method. It had some agile aspects to it, but it was mostly iterative. But it sort of broke the log jam, and it basically said, you know what, this waterfall stuff is not working. Here's why. It was actually interesting. It was the Walker Royce, the son of Winston Royce, the guy who wrote the original Waterfall paper, was involved with RUP, right? So, and the original Waterfall paper, if you choose to read it, and very few people have, but if you choose to read it, it very clearly says, because Winston did his PhD in this, and the results of the PhD was that this was a phenomenally bad idea. Don't do Waterfall, bad idea, and here's why. So he laid the groundworks for what he eventually became iterative and then agile. So anyways, so RUP came out, and that spoke to me. I said, well, you know what, this is way better than this waterfall stuff. So I moved to RUP. Then at that time, I was speaking at conferences and working with people. So I was actually working in a company where I was working with the product of Jeff Sutherland, because he was running a small talk company at the time. So I was actually on the largest small project in the world for his product. And so anyways, I was hanging out with all the people that were working in Agile, and we're working in stuff that was going to become Agile. So then the Agile manifesto was written, and that spoke to me. And then we published Agile modeling, stuff like that. So it was more of a gradual. I improved over time, right? It was like a 10-year span of trying something, seeing it didn't work well, trying something different. Oh yeah, this works, and then improving upon that. But so it was a gradual. But that was the times, right? Like that was the 90s. So that was the way it was. Whereas now, what's interesting now is that all these things are in flight at once. So there is some agile stuff going on. There is lean stuff going on. There's hybrid stuff going on. There's serial stuff going on. So today's generation are looking at this going, what the heck do I do? And it's turned into religion, right? So it's like, you got the agile purists going, rah, 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 everything's got to be agile or you're evil. Then you've got the traditional people, and they're going, rah, 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 everything's got to be serial, because these agile kids don't know what they're talking about. And the problem is that both those camps are speaking from different contexts. So agile makes sense in some contexts and is the kiss of death in others. Yeah. Traditional serial approaches make sense in some contexts and is the kiss of death in others. And until you're mature enough to recognize, and very few people are, but until you're mature enough to recognize that and to understand when you do one over the other, and when you need to shift from one to the other because your situation changed, then you're always going to be frustrated. You're always going to be in trouble. And this is what we teach in Disciplined Agile, right? We teach context counts. Choose your way of working for the situation that you actually face, rather than what some official process guy has told you to do. Do the right thing. Don't do don't do the official thing.
I think this is actually what is Agile about. So like being agile, like I know this is like a modern philosophy, like being agile versus doing agile, but like going behind this, like what does it mean to be agile? It's like to adapt to any kind of circumstances and do the right thing, as you mentioned. So it's always something behind the processes. You cannot like write down process for any kind of situation that you have. So you have to adapt. And there is a common issue with, for example, many of my students, I mean, people I know asking things like, in a certain position, like when they are required the project manager, they're requiring knowledge of like 20 different frameworks and methodologies. Do I need this? And I think like, guys, I don't know half of them, and I never applied half of these methodologies that they require for certain positions. And it's absolutely no sense to learn all of them, because in that case, you will spend half of your life of studying without doing some stuff. So just choose one, choose two, three, or a couple of them, like learn a lot, and then just understand how to differentiate them, how to apply them to a different sector. That's where it comes. And not just saying like turning it into a religion, as you're saying, because what I see now in LinkedIn, like agile evangelist, agile believer, like we do like this, and so it's like it's actually I don't know. It's becoming like some kind of creepy stuff about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, the problem with the evangelists is they typically only know one or two things, right? And because they know one or two things, and they believe those one or two things are the most awesome things in the world, then they go and they evangelize them. But the reality is it's not. So for example, yeah, so you're absolutely right. Like, there's all these toolkits and frameworks and all this sort of stuff out, the methods. You can't possibly learn them all. There's just too much you can't. But so what we do is, we are trying to solve that problem in DA. So what we do is we put these things in a context. So we look at a methodology like EVM or OKR or SAFe or Scrum or whatever, and we pull the practices out of it, and we say, well, wait a minute. So what are the practices of Scrum? What are the practices of SAFe or EVM or whatever? And then we put them into context, because we know you can't learn them all. It's not possible. But what we can teach you to do is how to find them, how to look them up. So we put them into context for you. We say, okay, so here's this technique, daily stand-up meetings, a very simple technique. So we say, here's what it is, blah, 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 blah. If you want to learn more, go read this or go watch this video. But then we put it in context. Here are the advantages of this technique. Here are the disadvantages. So now we're in a position to, you have a basic understanding of the technique. You know where to go looking for more information if that's not enough, and it never is. But most importantly, the context. You can now make a decision. Does this technique make sense for me in my situation? Right? Because there's no such thing as a best practice. What there is are all these practices are contextual in nature, and you want to pick the right one for you in your current situation. But you don't have those. You fundamentally don't have those skills or knowledge, because you're not a process expert. You're not an expert on the 50 methods that are out there, or, and it's more than 50, but, and you never will be. You never will be. But you still need to have the skills to choose your own way of working if you want to be effective. So instead, you've got to learn, learn how to use the toolkit to find the techniques and then adopt the techniques that are right for you. So these methods like Scrum and SAFe and, all these other things, they've made choices for you. Those choices probably are not the choices that you need to make, because they don't know anything about you. They don't know your skills. They don't know what situation you're in. And yet they have the arrogance to tell you that these are the best practices. My methodology is the best methodology ever. It's not. It can't think for yourself. It can't possibly be. It can't, unless, except by pure luck, that you just happen to be in that situation that method fits for perfectly, right? So as an adult, as a professional, you need to pick your own way of working. So you need to you need to learn the skills to do that, not blindly follow a method. And that's what we get at in DA. We teach you that, because that's the real skill. And project management skills are amongst those, right? But if I look at the point of view from, like, just say an IT project, what types of I got to worry about, well, do we have management skills in the team, testing skills, design skills, requirement skills, programming skills, deployment skills, automation skills, and like security skills, and many others, right? So how could you possibly have and you were saying this earlier, how could you possibly have a method that was right? Just for something, straightforward, like a software team. It's absolutely ridiculous. So my team needs to pick the right ways of working for us in our situation. But we need to be smart enough to know, we darn well better be addressing security and all those other things I just listed, and then pick the right techniques off the shelf for whatever it is that we're doing. Because security on my team, like how do I address security on my team, is going to be very different than how you address security on your team. Because your team is building an app, my team is building a green screen on a mainframe. Totally different things. So we both have to address security, of course, but it's going to be completely and utterly different. So it is what it is, right? So how could you possibly have one method that would make sense for our two teams?
I think as also talking about the manifesto part and where it all came from. Yeah, Agile Manifesto. A few weeks ago, I was sent interesting half a joke document, let's call it like modified Agile Manifesto for enterprises, like let's call it like. And it was one of the interesting stuff, but I catch myself that it was like the true stuff. I mean, saying like these individuals and interactions over processes and tools, like this famous sentence, and then with the small letters below saying like, where of course individuals and interaction are important after you are working with all the processes that is applicable to our company. I mean, no one in real life, let's be like straightforward, honestly saying like, we have a process that you need to do this, then this, then this, like throw this off. It's better for you to select. This is actually where I fully agree with you. I mean, I think that Agile is more like, is chosen because many things is tried to be explained in an open way. I mean, there are a lot of what a project manager should think, should adapt, should modify for his own projects, and this is not covered. I mean, like specific stuff. How do I treat the security part? I don't know. It's like there is a couple of values on which I need to pick up decision, but practically how we cover this security part, for example. And this is actually very interesting. And you mentioning the DA, the disciplined agile. How I know that it's the trending topic now, and I particularly got interested in it not so far along, and it's still raising some questions. I mean, there are like two parts. There are like, let's call it true agilists, like who are like evangelizing the agile, saying that there is an disciplined agile. It's like copy of Waterfall with like spiced up with some agile stuff. And the second part was saying like the agile is outdated, and outdated not in a bad way. I mean, there are significant amount of changes after 2001 when manifesto was written that needs to be covered right now with this, with new technologies, new teams, new people. And that's where I think controversial coming. How the disciplined agile idea came, and what is the current trend of evolution? Let's call it like this. If I can mention, where is it going? I mean,
yeah. So Disciplined Agile came out of reality, right? So I'm a firm believer in observing things rather than making crap up and telling you this is the way you should work. So what happened was, over the years, we were working with organizations around the world. So I was leading I was the chief methodologist for IT at IBM Rational for years, and my team was going out, with business partners, and we were working with organizations, a very wide range of organizations, all around the world, in all different sectors, and we were helping them to become more agile and more lean, and often at scale. But our version of scale wasn't just large teams. That's an easy problem to solve. Back in the day it wasn't, but it's been solved. It's a trivial problem, actually. But we were also dealing with things like regulatory compliance and, complex problems and legacy systems, and like not the fantasy world, small team, brand new thing. Everybody leaves us alone. We'll just do what we want. But the actual reality that you face in the real world. So we observed what was going on. And first thing we observed was everybody was struggling. Nobody had figured it out really. And those that sort of did, that were close, spent a lot of time, a lot of effort doing it. And it was certainly nowhere even remotely resembling what the methodologists were talking about. So we started saying, well, wait a minute. Clearly there's a need for some sort of methodology or something to help, because of all like just the grotesque waste and struggle that people were going through. But everybody's doing things differently. Like that was the other thing we observed, right? Everybody is, and it's easy. Every person is unique. Therefore, every team is unique, and every organization is unique as a result. So one size does not fit all. These prescriptive methods just don't get the job done. So we observed that we need some sort of better methodology, but we also observed, well, wait a minute, everybody's unique, and one method's not going to work for them. That's a big problem. So, and it took us a while to figure this one out, right? So, and we basically we figured out that instead of telling people what to do, we need to say, here's the issues you need to think about, like security, right? How are we going to make this thing secure? And here are the options for doing it. And here are the trade-offs of those options. So you choose the right strategy for you in your situation, because I don't know what your situation is, so I can't tell you what the best practices are. And anybody who tells you that they've got best practices, don't believe them. There might be very good practices for some, well, they will be very good practices in some situations, but they'll be a phenomenally bad idea in others. Do they even know what they're talking about, right? Do they have they used this enough that they know when it doesn't work? And that's an interesting observation. Like if you read the original extreme programming book by Kent Beck, which was a phenomenal piece of work, but the thing that really struck me about that book was that Kent not only said, here's how you do extreme programming, here's what it's all about, and here's how you do it, but he also said, and he was phenomenally clear, this is when it's not going to work, or I don't know if it will work in this sort of a situation, so good luck, right? It's not for everybody. And he was spectacularly clear about that. And that at the time was a radical concept, because the other methods really, nobody was thinking that way, right? So we took that to heart in Disciplined Agile. So Disciplined Agile started with Disciplined Agile delivery. How do you do software development from beginning to end, full life cycle? And this is one of the things, when people whine, well, this is just like a serial project, they clearly, they're going to be novice, they're going to be junior people saying that, right? Or either that, or they know exactly nothing about DA. But yeah, because we look at the full life cycle. What do you actually have to do to get the job done? Not the fantasy world stuff that you want to focus on, but everything from beginning to end to get something out the door. Because you got to do some upfront thinking. Sorry, it's the way it is, right? And it's sprint zero, call it what, spin whatever terminology you want. But the reality is that you got to do some upfront thinking to get going. You got to do the work in the middle, and you got to release at some point on the back end. And yes, if you've got a full DevOps pipeline and you've done all the work, then releasing is should be like that. But not a lot of teams are in that situation. Sorry, but if they are, good for them. But then you'd be following a different life cycle, wouldn't you? You'd be following more of a continuous delivery life cycle rather than the project life cycle, and that's okay. So different teams, different situations work in different ways. But so anyway, so in DA, we are honest and explicit about that. And that's just software development, right? But then over the years, so that's where we started. But then over the years, we extended into DevOps. We did some of the original writings. If you look, if you go back, back in the late 2000s, we were embedding DevOps stuff into the method from the very beginning. So we expanded to DevOps. Then we brought it out to the enterprise. So how do you do? How can an organization be agile? So how do you do agile marketing and agile finance, and how does it all fit together, right? So there's a lot of great, there's an agile marketing movement, which is great, an agile finance movement, which is great, but they're all focusing on their own thing, right? Nobody's really focusing on the bigger picture of how does it all fit together? Because I don't care how good your marketing department is if they're not working well with the other groups in your organization. It doesn't matter, right? Yeah. It's like being a really great programmer, and then you can't, the people that release things can't get things out the door. Right? So great, your awesome code is sitting on the shelf. It doesn't mean anything. You haven't done anything, right? So it's all got to fit together, right? So, and then what happens is when you look at the bigger picture is ugly and it's complicated because the world is ugly and complicated. It is what it is. So, and you can make it better, but if you don't understand how things fit together, and if you don't understand your options and how you can improve, then you never will. So those are the skills we teach in DA. And those are higher level skills than what you would get out of, say, something like Scrum. And Scrum is great, don't get me wrong, but it's a trivial 13-page thingy. How far can you go with 13 pages, right?
I think it's
So
the starting point. That's like if
it's a starting point.
it's a starting point, and this is usually what I teach. Like you won't find answers in the Scrum guide, like all the answers. You will find, let's call it the first step, where you can start with the process, and then you will have your evolution is all solely on your part. So what do you want to learn about this? So continuing the topic of the disciplined agile. So as I see currently, the PMI take this disciplined agile methodology seriously, and it's like integrating into this methodology, and it's like promoting it very good. So the latest PMBOK I was thinking was like already heavily impact on it. So what will be the next steps? I mean, how it's going to evolve? What will be the evolution? Because I think the current situation, like with all this pandemic stuff, is the perfect. It's a bad saying. Like it's the perfect time for experimenting with the methodology that it works for projects. Yeah, so I might sound terrible, but what I meant actually. So what will be the next trends, or what's the evolution path for the disciplined agile that you see?
Yeah, so first, I want to point out, so the 7th edition of the PMBOK guide is roughly half agile. So, and this is something that a lot of people haven't really picked up on yet. And it's either agile or a hybrid agile approach. So roughly half is that, and then the other half is traditional, and rightfully so. So it really is a solid mix. So I suspect that the next edition, like the 8th edition, I guess, of the PMBOK guide will have more agile and more lean in it. So that trend will continue. I would think, we don't have a solid plan yet for that, but call it is. So how could it not work out that way? So and probably more lean, actually. If I had to pick one thing that I would really focus on, would be more, throw some more lean stuff in there. But anyways, so there's that. So for DA, so we're like really an umbrella over everything. So like, program management, we have an explicit process blade, a process area for program management, for governance, for portfolio management, for vendor management, for enterprise architecture, for security, for finance, for many other things. You probably can't see it, but that diagram with all the hexes on it, I don't know how well it's going to render on the screen, but each one of those dots, one of those hexes is a process area in the toolkit. So we're really an umbrella over everything that PMI does, and you could certainly look at it that way. And the DA is a hybrid. We adopt ideas from in many ways the name is a misnomer. It's far more than just agile, because there's agile stuff in there, there's lean stuff in there, there's the traditional serial stuff in there. Because we put ideas and practices and strategies into context. I don't really care where they come from. What I care about is, what is this technique? Why would you do it? Why wouldn't you want to do it? What advantages, disadvantages are, like, what's the context for it? That's what we focus on. How does it fit in with everything else? That's really the context. So one of the strange thing, strange in quotes, about DA is that we have many traditional techniques, some of which are very good, some of which really aren't that good. But they make sense in some situations. So instead of pointing at something and saying, well, that's evil, that's not agile, we would never do that, that's not pure, you're bad for doing that. That's what the religious, the evangelists want to do, right? Okay, fine, cute. But I look at something and I say, well, wait a minute, when would I do that? When would I not do that? So the things that people are pointing out and saying bad, there's some bad ideas there, but you know what? There's some, I have never ever found a worst practice. I've never found a best practice. I've been looking. I've seen thousands of strategies presented as best practices. I go to conferences and watch videos, and people say, well, this is the best practice, blah 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 blah. And that's total nonsense. total nonsense. It's marketing. It's marketing stuff. Fine. It's a wonderful marketing term, but every single practice, every single strategy has advantages and disadvantages. So it's really all about the context. When is that a good strategy for me? Not because you say it's good. When is it good for me, and when is it not good for me? That's how a professional needs to think.
I heard concerns from different people who are just like touching the surface with disciplined agile is that with disciplined agile, they're saying like this is the death of traditional model. I mean, with the waterfall. So what do you think about this? Is there an eventually a point in time when like waterfall model, like one of the fathers of the project manager, like organical one of the part of the project manager will step away and saying like, I'm outdated completely?
I don't believe that at all, for a bunch of reasons. Now, because there are some efforts that it just makes sense to do a waterfall serial approach, and you'd be foolish not to. Now, those tend to be straightforward, low risk things, but why would you do agile for something that's low risk? It doesn't make any sense. There's other efforts where it makes sense to be very lean, and agile doesn't work because you need more of a Kanban type of an approach. So there will always be a need for traditional or traditional-ish now project management. So for example, like certainly hybrid will probably take over traditional, right? So when I say traditional, like most traditional projects really are a hybrid these days, right? They're bringing in some good ideas from whether they know it or not. They're bringing in some good ideas from Agile. I recently had a house built and using a hybrid management approach. We started with a traditional approach and it failed. And we went through 2 project managers until we finally put in more of a hybrid manager that understood what you needed to build a house. People have been building houses for millennia.
Not agile.
And like, so something simple and straightforward, like building a house, traditional didn't get the job done for us. And we had to go hybrid. And that was perfectly fine, right? Do the right thing for the situation that you face. So yeah, if you spend time on a building project, they're very, they can be very agile. There's some very traditional things about it because you got to worry about engineering and regulatory compliance, stuff like that. But you can be, and people are very agile building things, even though and that they might be fooling themselves and saying, "Oh, we're fully traditional." But if you choose to observe what's going on, it's a
yeah, actually, this makes sense. There, usually, I got this opinion about the public money projects as well, because there are a lot of planning beforehand. You need to submit a lot of papers with the straight plans, with the resources, with the budget and everything. So it's some place where, like, at certain extent, the Waterfall will be, because there are certain processes like governmental processes that need to be obeyed. So I don't believe either that the waterfall model will eventually step away. I think the easiness of agile, why it is attracting many people, like the easiness is that it's leaving a lot of room to interpretation to the particular person. I mean, it's just and I can't say 100% that this is a power. I mean, like saying like, okay, this is the general value. What do the rest is up to you. You decide how to do it. In one case, we can say like, okay, it's a power. I am free to do how I believe so. But actually, if there will be like a magic pill, let's call it like this, which will solve all the problems, but there is not. So it's still again a person who will making some decisions. So in that case, Agile is certainly not covering everything that you need. You still need to research for some solutions. And about best practice is the same.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the agile stuff is a tad delusional. So like, they're not autonomous teams, right? They still have to be compliant. They still have to get funding. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on that they might not want to recognize, or they might not want to, they might not want to focus on because it's not agile, it's not pure, or they're just not interested, whatever reason. But you need to look at the bigger picture. You need to be mature enough to look at what's actually going on. And you start realizing it's really a hybrid world. And you start realizing that there's good reasons why You have to be, compliant, right? Like I've done Agile in life critical regulatory compliance situations, and that is very different than doing Agile to build an app for an iPhone. Although there's significant security concerns there and good stuff like that you've got to follow. So we need to recognize that. But also, I would say the traditional folks are tad delusional as well. Like, earlier you're using the government project example. Well, I will let the success rate of government projects speak for itself. And like, when was the last time the government brought anything on time and on budget? Right. We throw around this term predictive a lot, but the reality is, it's like, how many like building projects have you seen come in on time and on budget? No, and I'm talking compare against what they originally signed off on, not what they got change requests for. And like, the buildings are late. I live 6 houses up from a new subway line that was supposed to be up and running in 2018. Here we are at the beginning of 2022. It will not be running by the end of 2020. They've been promising maybe it'll be, right now, maybe the subway will start running at the end of 2022. Now they're saying, oh, it's probably going to slip to 2023. Which and all you got to do is go up to the corner and see what the status is, and you see, there's no way it can be done in here. Like, it just doesn't work that way, right? But it doesn't matter. They're already observably 4 years over time, hundreds of millions of dollars over budget, because the fantasy world of a government project, it just doesn't work that way, right? They had to drill a tunnel for 23 kilometers. They hit some rock every so often. Like, they hit some sand every so often, right? And you don't know that until you're drilling along. So all your plans are wonderful and all your budgets are wonderful, but then reality happens. So it's not quite as predictive as people think. Now that's a bespoke project, but like I said, I built a house a couple of years ago, and we had to go hybrid eventually. That was only not a subway; it's a house. Come on, come on! You're telling me you don't know how to build houses yet after millennia? And they don't, right? It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So we need to observe things and deal with reality. So it's going to be a hybrid world. So traditional will, and it's been doing it for a long time, right? Like I said, the Buck Guide is half agile now. And it's, so all these agile ideas are creeping into traditional, and and they're still calling it traditional, but it's really a hybrid in many cases. And that's the good thing, and that's what a good project manager has to do, right? Is you've got to do what you need to do to get the job done at the time. And your plans are going to shift and change, and you might have to go hat in hand for more money, or go ask for more time, or what, or less of this or more of this. It's the job. It's the job.
Yeah.
Things change, things evolve.
Yes, specifically talking about IT, I mean, it's like traditionally, let's call it, linked heavily to agile methodologies like the IT, because
that's where it came from.
So it's where it come from. I remember I was on a training for one of the creators of the Agile Manifesto, Ari van Beckenham, and he was saying, like, the baddest mistake we did, we put up like this software word in the values, because it's like definitely not about the software, but still it is as it is. I mean, IT is heavily linked with agile, and currently in the world of technologies, in the world of IT, I think I can call it like this, because everything now running on IT. What's the place for the disciplined agile? I mean, how it will be? I mean, eventually, can it push back the agile methodologies with saying with the more strict, with the process, with the contextual ideas that you're saying? What's your opinion on this?
No, so I look at the methods like SAFe and Scrum and others as good starting points. So so try to choose a method that roughly fits what you're trying to do. But recognize that one method is not going to get the job done for every single team in your organization. It doesn't work. It's totally naive. So when somebody tells me they're a Scrum shop or a SAFe shop or a Kanban shop, whatever, either they're a very small company with only 1 or 2 teams, or they're delusional, because it's just like, it's observably not true. Right. Yeah. Like, when somebody tells me they work in a Scrum shop. Oh, really? All your teams are doing Scrum? Oh, yeah, of course. Really? What about your help desk team? Oh, no, they're doing Kanban. Oh, so you're not really you're not really 100% Scrum, are you? How about that, right? So whatever, and that, fair enough. So what the goal of DA is to teach you how to improve and how to get better and how to tailor your way of working for the situation that you face. So where Scrum will tell you some really good things to get you going, it doesn't fill in the blanks. Like we were talking about it earlier, it doesn't tell you about security. Good luck, right? Like that's their attitude. Well, yeah, Scrum, 13 pages, woohoo, center of the universe. Oh, good luck on everything else you need to do, which is like 99% of your job. But good luck, right? So they leave you hanging. And whereas in DA, we say, well, wait a minute, you might want to think about security. You might want to think about database stuff. Like the Agile methods, all the other Agile methods, what's their story about dealing with data? Because if you're an IT project, I bet you got data. So what are the Agile methods telling you about data? Stuff that I didn't write. Okay. Like we'll take that off the table. What do you got left? Not a lot. Yeah. And it's certainly not an explicit part of any of the major methodologies. And yet you're all doing it. Yeah,
that's the issue.
Yet,
in deep.
Yeah. It's a blatantly obvious issue, but you know what? It's not sexy. It's not fun, but it's critical. It's absolutely critical to your success.
You can't slow it down.
Yeah.
Actually, you can just think like, let's forget about this. This is one of the crucial stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial, and yet nobody wants to talk about it because it's not fun. It's not sexy. So in DA, we walk you through there. This is so some people say it's complicated. Woe is me, whine. But then my response to that is always, okay, so I appreciate that it's complicated. Yeah, I'm the first person to tell you that. What would you take away? Don't tell me it's overly complicated until you can tell me one thing, just one thing, because I'm happy to take it away if you've got a coherent story, because I'm constantly looking to prune. Tell me one thing you want to take away. And then as soon as we have that conversation, and I basically tell them to put up or shut up, then the conversation within minutes will go to, well, now that I actually look at it, I think you're missing this, and this.
Yeah.
So we go from it's too complicated. Now you want to add stuff. It's not complicated enough for you, right? And then we can have a conversation. Maybe, or maybe it is missing, or wait a minute, no, it's really over here. You just didn't know that. So fair enough, right? But yeah, and this is the challenge when you look at the bigger picture, which is what we do. You get a different answer than when you narrowly focus on something that you want to sell people.
I see. That's a good point, and this is definitely.
But if there's anything, if anybody who's watching this video, if they think there's something that should be removed, let me know.
Yeah,
let me know.
So that's a good point. That's a good.
I hear that. Yeah, I really want to hear that.
One question I always ask at the end of the interview, for a person who for some person who is just trying to go into the industry, let's not differentiate IT project management or construction, like project management. What will be your advice to start with? And I'm not saying the ordinary stuff to be successful, because there is no a benchmark for being successful. So what will be your advice of starting it? What they should be paying attention to? Let's call it that.
Yeah. So I tell people to, definitely you want to be in a position where you can learn and get some skills. So if you're like fresh out of school and looking for your first job, just get a job, or start a job, create your own job, and just work like the basic. It's interesting. And it's, I don't want to sound like the old guy, telling you to get off my lawn, but because, I listened to that, when I was younger too, but, basic skills like showing up on time, or like showing up and things are different, and, flex time and all that sort of stuff. But, basic work skills and being trustworthy, and that, it takes time to learn that, right? It really does. So, people knock the McDonald's jobs and all this sort of stuff, but you know what? McDonald's teaches you to show up on time. teaches you to learn some, if you're flipping hamburgers at McDonald's, right? It teaches you to show up and work with others and, get along well. And also, those are important skills. So just you're getting some experience under your belt, and your first job, you're not going to be CEO. Like, unless you're starting your own company, right? So being reasonable, having reasonable expectations.
That's the reality, I guess.
It's reality, yeah. But be willing to learn, and no matter where you're starting, you've got a boatload of stuff to learn. Like, regardless of what your specialty is, you can learn. You could spend a decade learning more about whatever it is that you want to do. But there's a lot more to the world than that. So keep your eyes open, right? And ask yourself, what the heck is going on? And, why do these finance people exist? What would they possibly do? Because that, first of all, you want to understand that. But second, that might be phenomenally interesting for you. Who knows, right? You don't know. So learn a little bit about it, because that might be the best thing for you ever. Who knows, right? Or maybe you can combine, like, all these people who are, like the Elon Musks of the world and people like that. They're constantly learning, they're constantly doing things, and they're not specialized. They've got a handle on a very wide range of topics and how it all fits together. And often a lot of the really successful people in the world have combined 2 or 3 things in a unique way. And they get, or they simply know that, this is how IT and finance works together, or IT and procurement works together, or procurement and finance work together, right? And they're really good at just making those 2 things work together really well. And then, there's some, and I hope they love that.
Yeah, this will be a good start.
And love what you do. Love what you do. If you don't love what you do, go find something else, because it's a horrible life. If you hate your job, you spend a third of your life working.
Yeah, considering the amount of time that we spend at work, it's terrible to do it. I agree with you. It's simple, but it's very simple, but yet one of the most difficult stuff to do, I guess. Love what you do.
Yeah, love what you do.
Okay.
Find a way to love it. And sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? You got to pay the bills. So find a way to love it. Make it, improve it. Right? Well, that's the thing too, right? Like, everybody knocks flipping hamburgers, but some people love flipping hamburgers. But you could get a job flipping hamburgers and figure out ways to make that not so good job to be really awesome. And this is what we try to teach in DA. It's like, do what you can to make your environment as awesome and joyful as you possibly can.
I see.
Because why not? Right? Why not? Like, why do something you hate? Hey, let's make it fun. Let's make it fun.
Very good advice, even for me as well. So I will took it as well. So thank you very much, Scott. It was really amazing. I enjoyed our interview very much, and I do believe that the people who will watch this also will enjoy it as well. So this was the channel AgileSeeker, and today our guest was Scott Ambler, the advisory board member in Intersection Group, and also vice president in PMI, chief scientist for Disciplined Agile. Hope I didn't forget it once again.
Nope,
okay, I got it, everything. Thank you very much, Scott. It was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
Thank you.